What I see people do is they learn about vibration, because your vibration determines what you attract into your 3D reality. So when you learn about the importance of your vibration, whenever you feel anything negative, you want to resist it, because you end up freaking the fuck out that you're feeling negative, and then you attach all of this meaning to feeling negative. And the fact that I'm feeling this means that I don't know what I'm doing, that I should know better. This is going to affect my bank account. This is going to affect my business.
It's just so wild, because like even the concepts that we learn about in manifestation and spirituality has its own ego to it.
Yeah, it does.
It's like it's someone who is afraid of negative emotions isn't holding a high fucking vibration.
Absolutely.
Holding a high vibration is actually your willingness to feel your emotion.
What I always love to say with this is it doesn't matter what thoughts come up. It doesn't matter what negative belief comes up. What matters is who you are when they come up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Consciously Thriving podcast.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Cheers to your coffee. This is actually red wine. I actually haven't taken a sip yet. I can't be drinking red wine.
It's 10:40 in the morning.
10:40. Have we been sitting here for like nearly 2 hours talking actual shit?
Yeah, we actually have.
No, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
I did not know.
No, we had to wait for the sun. Not that long.
The sun was gone by like a long time ago. When she says we have to wait for the sun, it's in reference to filming, because we film this for YouTube, so you can actually, there's a lot going on right now. Hold on, okay?
Yeah, there's a lot, because I'm like, we're dressed in Halloween outfits. Like, we addressed this.
There's so much, but just to give you guys reference on what she's talking about, we film this for YouTube. So if you prefer to watch the podcast on YouTube and you want to actually like see us, you can actually join us on YouTube and you can see the video version of this podcast there. So we have to wait for like a specific time of day to film, because sometimes the light comes through the window in this like lounge room of mine and it looks really funky. Like it just makes us look dark and it's just so shit. There have been so many times that we've, hold on, let me explain this. There are so many times where we've actually like had to not film, and we couldn't film for the day because the sun was coming in this like awkward way and it made us look so funny. Anyway, that's what she's referring to. And then the next elephant in the room is what we look like right now.
I just can't. Okay, I look semi-normal. So for those who are listening on the podcast, I'm in Batwoman.
Yeah.
I'm Batwoman.
You keep calling yourself Batman.
I know.
So what do you got packing down there, sweetie?
What?
I said, what do you got packing down there?
No, so I am Batwoman in Shule.
I am more from the Akatar series. If you know who I am, if you know who I'm referring to right now, then we need to be best friends. I automatically want to hang out with you. DM me, talk to me. I'm like, I literally like finding book besties is my favorite pastime. I even have a book talk. If you know, you know. The book girlies get it. The fantasy book girlies get it. The romantasy girlies. Anyway, yeah. So my sister had these like fae ears, and I was like, oh my god, I have a red dress. I'm gonna be more, and I just fucking knew it. I was
Love
like,
it.
I'm being her.
Love
anyway,
it.
You either know who I am or you don't. And she's like, yeah, always carrying a wine. So that's what that wine is.
Love it. So welcome to this Halloween episode, and we're from Australia, so.
I know, it's actually not a big thing here.
It's not a big thing here. Shule sent me a video of these podcasters in America, and she's like, we need to do this. And I was like, stop trying to make fetch happen.
They were dressed up in the video. You don't give context.
No, I said...
You don't give context.
I said they did a podcast episode dressed in Halloween.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
I did not hear that.
You didn't listen properly.
Fuck. All right. Sorry. Well, I thought you didn't give context. I was like, bruh.
I said they were in Halloween.
They were in Halloween costumes. You just said that they were in Halloween.
They get what I mean.
Come on.
They were dressed up for Halloween.
They were dressed up for Halloween. They looked so good. And I was just like, oh my god, we have to dress up. As if we wouldn't.
But I was like, we're from...
on Halloween.
Yeah. But I'm not from Australia.
I know, but I feel like everyone in Australia is trying to make Halloween happen.
They are, and I feel like this year, like, I went to a Halloween party on the weekend, and I'm like, wow, this is actually, I wish we had more of this in Australia. It's actually really fun.
We're the change makers.
Yeah,
like, I actually had this last year with my partner. I decorated my house in, like, spooky shit. Yeah. So people would come trick-or-treat here, and Dan's like, why? Like, stop it, you know? Because he's like, we're not American. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up. Like, we need to be the change. I want to see more of this. I love, like, holidays.
No, I agree. I agree. I was actually thinking that. I was like, it's getting bigger.
It's getting bigger.
Not conform to the rest of Australia.
It's because, like, now we have access to, like, Instagram and we're connected to the rest of the world. And it's like, we see everyone dressing up and we're like, why the fuck are we not doing it? We're losers.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We're the losers.
We are the losers. So, yeah, you know what? I'm like, I wrote Nadia into dressing up today. When I suggested it to her, she's like, come on. And I was like, nah, you're doing it. It's just happening.
No, we're doing something after this. So I was like, we're wearing costumes for that, ? And she's like, for the podcast. I was like,
yeah,
okay.
no.
No, but I'm here now and I'm vibing it. So
exactly.
enjoy.
No, we are. I'm doing a Halloween party. I'm telling you, I'm taking this to the next fucking level.
Yeah.
It's going to be the saddest party of our lives.
I reckon
it's just like me, you, and my sister and her friend. But
it's okay.
It's
going to be fun.
going to be fun.
And your mum.
And my mum, oh yeah. My mum's coming.
No, it's something nice to do for Shule's little sister.
Yeah, it'll be nice. Well, it's literally for us too. It's
It's
for
for us,
me.
of course.
It's literally for me.
We're all in it. We've got all our inner child coming out.
Literally.
But no, seriously, let's vibe out to this Halloween episode.
Exactly. So that's the costumes. Happy Halloween, spooky season. We're making it a thing in Australia.
Yeah.
Now, what are we going to talk about in today's episode? Why don't you introduce the topic?
Yeah, so today's episode is going to be all around why you cannot overcome your limiting beliefs.
Yes, I'm actually really excited to talk about this because this has been like something that's been coming up for me quite a bit this week. I've had like, some limiting thoughts, anxious thoughts really like coming at me, and the way that I'm walking myself through it is so different to how I used to walk myself through it. And I can just see how much more like effective it is now with how I like meet myself when I have anxious thoughts. And it blows my mind to think that I did it any other way. And I'm being cryptic now, but let's actually like dive into the juice.
When it comes to limiting beliefs, oftentimes like when we get into this space, we are very much taught to overcome limiting beliefs from a very mental, like you're overcoming them from the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And like the journey that we've been on is that whilst we can overcome like working through limiting beliefs from the mind and like doing a lot of like reprogramming, some conscious reprogramming from the mind, doesn't always heal your anxiety and it doesn't shift things in the body, right? This is why the beliefs and the things that you do want to hold into your body, like the abundance frequencies you do want to hold, they don't translate because you're only challenging them from the mind and your body doesn't come on board.
Mm-hmm.
So this journey for the both of us has really been about realizing like the way we've been working through them has just been this endless loop, right? So when we get into this space, like some of the ways in which we are working through limiting beliefs have been, challenging the belief, like actually like writing down your beliefs, like looking at like what you're currently believing and then flipping the script, or looking at some of the stories that are going on and like problem solving them, which is only actually keeping you in this like forever loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you mentioned there. It's like you're trying to overcome mental like mind games through mental mind games. And you notice, and you've likely had this experience before, where you're working through a limiting belief and you literally feel like no matter what you do, it never ends, right? It's like you for example, I feel like this is a good example. So an example that people use a lot when they have like limiting beliefs to work through worst case scenarios, right? So they'll be like, okay, so I'm afraid right now, my mind, my energy is afraid of like worst case scenario happening, right? So the go-to method to overcome a worst case scenario that's like in the industry that we see a lot of is go into the worst case scenario and address it head on, right? And be like, okay, let's go into this worst case scenario. What am I afraid of happening? Let's use a business owner as an example, right? I'm afraid of losing it all. I'm afraid of my partner leaving me and having nothing, having to live in a car.
Failed launch.
Like, but that's what it leads to essentially, right? That's the worst case. The worst case that you fail and it doesn't work out, right? So then you go to that worst case and you're living out that like scenario and you're like meeting all of the emotions, you're feeling it all and you're just like letting it all go, right? And you're thinking you're letting it all go. And then at the end of it, you might feel this sense of relief, like, oh, in the end, you realize that you're going to be fine without it. And that's the purpose of doing these worst case scenario exercises, right? So you go to the depths of it and then you realize, oh, in the end, I'm fine. I have nothing to actually worry about, right? But then what happens like a couple of minutes fucking later or the very next day, automatically you have something else that you're worrying about, or the feeling is still there. It's not actually ever addressed, right? You never actually feel good. And then the anxious feeling, the anxious thought just attaches onto something else. And then there's something else to worry about and go into worst case scenario about. It's never okay. And then sometimes you'll even notice that maybe you even like give yourself reassuring thoughts, but then your mind would be like, but this, but that, but this, and you're sitting there literally addressing the but this, but that, but this, and you're literally dancing with the mind. Nadia and I refer to this as salsering.
It's like you're salsering, and like it's your ego. So like that's like something I wanted to highlight as well. Like when we say mind, you're like, so what the ego actually like gets off to, and like what its job is your survival. So any way it can grab your attention to make you alert to something being wrong, or making you aware of a way in which it can soothe, because like that's a pattern. So it's like panic comes up, the ego gets panicked about something, and then it wants you to problem solve that so that it can soothe itself. But then because there is like a billion different things that could possibly go wrong, and like we're looking at like the worst case scenario example of like, you know, when those beliefs sort of come up, there is a billion things that can go not the ego's way. There's a billion things that could happen tomorrow. So the way in which we've been taught is to just like, continuously problem solve. And this is what the ego loves. Like this is how your ego stays in control. And a lot of people don't realize like they're working through their limiting beliefs, or you are working through these fears and your doubts through your mind. And that's why your body never really feels like it can come on board, and why you can't fully embody what it is that you want to, like abundance frequencies and things like that, because the ego is always in charge.
Yes. And that's the thing. It's like you're never moving out of those frequencies. You just keep dancing in those frequencies, and you never feel this sense of satisfaction, like you said, right? There's this feeling of like free, and like finally I don't have to feel this anymore. I will say though, there's like, it's like a time and place for all of these conversations, right? This isn't like such a black and white thing.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced topic.
Exactly. And we love to, like, as humans, put things in boxes and be like, okay, this is this goes here, and this is how it is always, and this goes here, and this is how that is always. And it's just not the fucking case. Yeah. Because the conversation on doing the limiting belief work and challenging your beliefs, it's helpful depending on what stage of the journey that you're on, right? It's like there's a point where it's like, okay, because I remember me when I first started in this space, I was so negative. I had such negative thoughts about the world that I actually did need to challenge those beliefs, right? I needed to talk to that ego side of me so that it had like less control over my life, because it was controlling every part of my existence.
Yeah. So it's like when a feeling or like a belief comes up, just say like if we use money for example, it's like there will be a stage in which like you need to recognize the actual beliefs that you do hold around money, and like obviously this manifests through anxiety and worry and panic. Like that's how you can tell like what the belief is. Yeah. And there will it's not that when, you know, like for example, if you're feeling scarcity around money, that you just ignore it. Yeah. It's just more of a sense of like sitting there day by day, working through it, and like trying to challenge every little thing that comes up. It's like there will be a time and place, and I still have these things when a thought comes up or a belief comes up where it feels like it's overtaking my body, and it's like important for me to practice what I'm preaching, but it's like not doing it from this place of like, it's almost like you don't need to convince yourself of a different thing. It just feels more like no longer identifying with that, because we know what the opposite belief is. We don't need to sit there and write it out, tell yourself 1,000 times, affirm it. Like, you know, you don't need to affirm it 1,000 times. It's like if you're having scarcity around money come up, it's like you feel those emotions, and we'll go into this as well. But you don't need to sit there like being like, okay, what do I need to think now? What's the thought I need to think? Like that is control, and like that's what the ego wants. It's more around releasing the feeling and just coming back to the truth. That's how I see it.
No, I agree. I think what like you highlighted there was you already know the truth. And that's the thing, right? Have you I know you've had this experience of you're drawn to this episode right now. It's like you've moved beyond the conversation of like doing the limiting belief work, challenging the thoughts and the shit, right? The reason why you haven't been able to shift out of that way of doing things and into like the embodied way of being that you want to be, right? You know that abundance exists. You know how the universe works. You know that everything is energy. You know who you want to be. You know that your dream life happens from the inside out, right? You know all of this, but why can't you embody it? Because you're playing the mind game. You're trying to work through mental concepts with mental concepts. It doesn't work like that, right? What you're supposed to be actually doing was what Nadia just said there, which is you have to now stop like identifying with the beliefs and allow them to be there without attaching to them, right? And this is the scariest part, and this is the next part of the journey.
The important thing here is like how the ego is like, and this is what the ego's job is. So it's like we get into this world to like break free from the limiting beliefs coming from the ego, but again, like because the ego is so loud and because it's so wanting to just protect you, that yeah, like we can literally get into spirals. And I think like it's so interesting. Like, have you had like actual moments like where you've seen clients like because I can see it like when I like sometimes when you're in it it's a little bit hard, but like with your clients and things like that, have you had examples of like when you've noticed them like trying to solve it, or like examples of like actually like having to work through?
Yeah, for sure with clients, with myself, like it's still something that I do, because like I have to catch myself out. Like I said, this week was like a big week for me in terms of like that shit coming up for me with the ego wanting to go into problem solving and wanting to go into like spirals of worry and anxious thoughts. And I could see the emotion and the energy starting up, but it was like there was this point where I was like, oh, in the past I would have actually gone into it and I would have tried to like go into the belief and be like, oh, why do you feel this way? Why is this coming up? But it's like I'm beyond that conversation now. And it's like, what you actually need to do, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, then what the fuck do you do? Like, how do you move through it?
Yeah.
How you do it is you don't do anything. And that's why I say this is like the most challenging thing that for people, because it's like uncomfortable. Don't do anything, right? Don't express the feeling. This is a really important conversation. Don't express the feeling. What do I mean by expression? Don't go into it. Don't give it a voice.
So can I give an example of that?
Yeah.
So people actually understand as well. So a good example was my partner is quite new to business. So he's been doing business now like on his own. He's been doing really well for like the last 4 months, I would say. And now he's going into a season with his business where, and he's not into like, he's into personal development, but he's not fully into this world. So he's learning. So this week, and because he's in like the building industry, he's like architectural draftsman. So during December and January, a lot of the building industry is a little bit more quiet, right? Like that's not always the case. Like that's just, you know, Christmas time for us. So things go slow down. So he went into a little bit of a panic around like, oh, business is going to slow down, and just like, you know, what happens, like starting to worry a little bit.
Yeah.
And rather than him feeding that thought and going into this is what I'm going to do if that happened, this is how I'm going to solve it out, or convincing himself he's got, like that's another thing, convincing himself he's going to be okay. And this was the advice I was giving him. This is like, I'm giving like what on advice, rather than attaching to what would I do in this situation, how am I going to feel, am I going to be okay, am I not going to be okay, any of that, like any form of mind problem solving. What he needed to do, and like what you need to do when these feelings come up, is feel the emotion, let it be there, but you don't go into that. You don't allow yourself to go into the problem solving, so that your ego can learn that it's not in charge, or you can learn to stop identifying with those thoughts, because those thoughts are natural, they're going to come up, but it's like the emotion wants to come up, and this is like the embodiment work. The emotion wants to come up. It wants to feel there. It wants to like move through you. And that's like the way we don't suppress the feeling coming up. But you do that without trying to solve it with the mind. So if that makes sense. So it's like, stop responding by attaching from the mind, but you don't avoid the feeling.
Yeah. And something else I want to talk about, like another form of expression with the emotion would actually be like anger rituals. I think I briefly mentioned that, like anger rituals. I don't know if you've actually noticed, but there's a lot of people that say they go into anger rituals and it only amplifies their anger. It actually doesn't make them feel any better, right? It feels like it just kind of, or it like, it doesn't actually like move into anything else. It just kind of like stays there. So that could be like a form of like expression with the emotion, identification with the emotion, where you give the emotion a voice, right? You give the thought a voice. Another example was the one that I used earlier, was worst case scenarios, that's a form of expressing it. You're feeding the ego. You're literally giving it what it wants.
Yeah.
It wants to go into worst case. It wants to try and figure out, what are we going to do? Are we going to be okay in that scenario? Can you prove it to me? Right? Because that's what it wants. It wants control. It wants your attention. It doesn't care how it's getting your attention. The fact that it can somehow get your attention gives the ego a feeling of, oh, she's listening now.
Yeah, she's listening now. I'm in charge.
I'm in charge.
That's exactly what it does. And something like to add to that is like, if you'll notice, like when you solve the whatever, like you get into the limiting belief, you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to embody. This is what I'm going to believe now.
Yeah.
You hold that and like that's fine. But then your ego will have that same pattern show up in a different way, right? Because the pattern has got, okay, so like if we take money, for example, just say I had a fear of scarcity around money coming up. And I'm like, okay, well, more money will come through, relax, abundance is available. Like, and I was like, you know, going into it and doing the mind work around that. The pattern there, the shadow there is my need to control. Like that's what's actually coming up, right? Because that's where the anxious feelings are coming up. Is like, because I can't control what happens next, or I can't control the situation, all these what ifs. So now I've lost what I was saying. Oh yeah, so the pattern there is the control. So a lot of people, when you're in this work, and this is where shadow work gets really deep, is you think that the pattern is, or the problem has got to do with money. So you deal with it on a mindset level, but why it like copy and paste itself onto the next problem is because you're not actually dealing with the problem, which is the control, which is what the ego is doing. So that is why when you attach and express it and try to move through it by like identifying, latching, doing all the things that you think that you need to do to get rid of it, it might solve itself in one area, but it will copy and paste onto the next.
That's exactly right. That's what keeps happening, right? It just keeps going to the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. And it's such an unreliable voice to listen to and to...
It's actually like, even in that book with Michael Singer, like something he said, and like just listen to this. This is like how crazy the ego is. Love the ego. I get like, you're here to protect me, and it's like not about like completely demonizing that, but when it comes to the future and it comes to some things, I'm just not gonna rely. It's like, it's
so
good
many
for,
things.
it's like I'll trust you when it's like
when I'm in a jungle and
I
I need to survive.
Or like when it's actually doing its proper job. But something Michael Singer says as well is like realizing like the voice, and realize like just getting to know that voice is like really good as well, just to see like what it does. I think like spending some time observing, that's like another thing, observing the mind, because like this happens a lot, right? So he used an example of like when you have a friendship and that person hasn't responded to your text, right? So you've sent a text to your friend and they haven't responded in like 3 days, and there's like part of you, some people might be like, whatever, I don't care, but like there might be a part of you that's just like, oh, they haven't responded to me, they don't care about me, blah, 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 all these things. And then on the 4th day they respond, and then all of a sudden how you feel about that person completely changes. And that's a really good way to really start seeing like this voice is not reliable. And this is what's happening when it comes to your limiting beliefs. The ego is just copying and pasting. It's like a yapping voice that does not stop.
Yeah, it really is like that. I love that example because it goes to show just how unreliable its voice is. It's like as soon as your outer experience changes, it's like automatically you're thinking something else. And it's wild it's wild to see the lengths that the ego will go in order to stay in control and to have you paying attention. And this is the work that I do with my clients that is the hardest for them to embody. And it's so funny to say out loud, because when we're saying this, like, what are we saying? We're actually telling you to do nothing, right? Don't deal with the thought. Don't deal with the limiting belief. Don't go into the feeling. Don't express it. Don't do an anger ritual. All you have to do is witness it coming up, right? So the first thing I spoke about was non-expression. Don't express it. The second thing is don't resist it. That's really important as well.
And this is like something I'd love, because you explain this really, really well. So we're at this place where it's like, okay, we get it. Don't express it. So don't go into it and you know, don't identify it, don't solve it, don't do any of that. Yeah. But then, you know, we have emotions, and we have that, we can feel that the resistance is in our body, right? So it's like a lot of the time there is an urge to deal with the resistance through the mind, but it's like, well, if I can no longer solve it through like the ego and through all these different ways. Like, what are they, like, how do you actually shift that emotion in your body and release the feeling? Because you should feel better at the end. Like, when you're having like feelings come up, it's not about ignoring them and resisting them and being like, just ignore them. Because like, that's, I really want to make that clear. Like, ignoring it is not what we're saying to do. We're just, it's just about not solving it through the mind.
Yeah.
So then we have these emotions come up in our body. The resistance is there. Example, like when we're business owners, there's moments where we don't have the launches and whatever it looks like, the resistance is there.
Yeah.
And how do we actually move past these stories without no longer using the mind to problem solve them?
Before we go into how to move through them, I want to talk about the one more thing that I was talking about in regards to when the emotion comes up, what not to do. So what we spoke about was expression, and then the second thing was don't resist them, right? Don't resist the emotion. So what can we give some examples of like actual like resistance to the emotions? Like, what could that actually look like in a real life example?
Yeah. So for me, like, example, like the best way to do it is like business, because I feel like business is like, when we have a lot of business owners in this, like on our podcast. So I'm just going to use that example. So like, all right, so for example, you're in a launch.
Oh, sorry. You're right. This dress is like so tight. This is like a dress from when I was.
It doesn't even look that tight. Like, it feels.
No, it's just like tight in like random spots.
Spots.
Yeah.
It's one of those dresses.
It's like I've had to put a pillow behind me as well, because I'm like to keep myself propped up and make sure my titties aren't coming out. It's like a whole thing happening right now. But this dress is like, how long have I had this dress for?
Like 7. I've worn it. Everyone's worn it.
Everyone's worn it from when we were like teenagers.
Anyway,
yeah.
Now I've lost what I was gonna say.
Sorry, I was talking about resistance.
So you know, you're in a launch or whatever, or you're running your business and you feel like clients aren't there, or whatever the feeling comes up. Resisting it would be having this emotion come up and just being like, whatever, I'm just going to ignore it, or just being like, you don't actually, like, that you resist the emotion there. So this feeling comes up and you just will go about your day. The feeling will be there and it just like sits there. And it's like this energy of like, and a lot of the time we go into resistance, we go into like the ego takes over because the feeling can be really uncomfortable. And that's often what happens is like, a lot of the time we can go to express it because that's the way the ego likes it, and then resist it. So resist it being completely just, actually it's what it sounds like, it's resistance, ignore it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
because it's like, if you can't deal with it, then the ego is like, well, then I don't want to feel it because this is really uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that was something I would say
well, actually, sorry, I'm just fully interrupting you right now because I have the thought and I don't want to lose it. Yeah. But, you know, like, if you think about it, why would you even want to express it in the first place? Like, why would you want to talk to the voice in the first place? It's because you don't want to feel it. So it all comes down to resisting the feeling.
Yeah, so it all ties together.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the biggest thing that I would say my ego, the pattern that it liked holding on to, it was less, I feel like you were more like I was problem solving, but no, I was, but I was a stronger at resisting it. For sure. I was a lot stronger at, there was a big part of me that would suppress how I felt, because it's like I almost couldn't be bothered. It's like my mind, I guess like what I was taught and what I like how I dealt with it was very much like go into the worst case scenario, and then they got to a point where it's like that's not helping, and it was like I wasn't aware that it wasn't helping, but it was like there was this part of me that's like I can't be bothered with dealing with every limiting belief that comes up. Like this way of doing it doesn't feel good. So then naturally, like my ego would just start unconsciously resisting it and just ignoring it. I wasn't even dealing with it.
Yeah, you were a big resistor.
So I was a big resistor.
That's true.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, no, resistance is just like you're so uncomfortable. It all comes down to resistance in the end.
Because the ego's uncomfortable with the feeling coming up.
Exactly. You don't want to deal with the emotion, right? So another form of resistance could also be your... Well, no, I'm not going to say that example. I don't know what I was going to say there. Don't even worry. But anyway, that's resistance anyway. You're just like... You're not allowing yourself to feel... Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's what I wanted to say in regards to resistance. But sorry, guys, I'm back. What I see people do a lot of is in the spiritual space is they learn about vibration and the importance of like, you know, like managing your vibration, because your vibration it determines what you attract into your 3D reality. So when you learn about the importance of your vibration, whenever you feel anything negative, you want to resist it, because you end up freaking the fuck out that you're feeling negative, and then you attach all of this meaning to feeling negative, and you're like, oh my God, and you further like attach the fucking limiting beliefs.
There's this belief that like having a negative emotion means you're not going to manifest that. It's crazy. It's wild. And like these are all, it's just so wild, because like even the concepts that we learn about in manifestation and spirituality has its own ego to it.
Yeah, it does.
It's like, it's wild. It's like, if you really understand, if you really understand the ego, there is a lot of things in this space that I'm like, he is fucking fully ego.
It's coming from ego.
Like even the idea of like your vibration does impact what you.
Fuck yeah, it does.
But do you understand? Like it's like, but someone who is afraid of negative emotions isn't holding a high fucking vibration.
Absolutely.
Holding a high vibration is actually your willingness to feel your emotions. That's what a high vibration is.
Literally, like being able to meet those emotions with love and curiosity, and not attaching any meaning to them, right? Not like when the negative thought comes up, not going into, oh my God, the fact that I'm feeling this means that I don't know what I'm doing, that I should know better. This is going to affect my bank account. This is going to affect my business. I shouldn't be feeling this way. That is not high vibrational.
No.
So what I always love to say with this is, it doesn't matter what thoughts come up. It doesn't matter what negative belief comes up. What matters is who you are when they come up, right? So a lot of people have been taught to resist them. And what I've seen a lot of people do in the spiritual space is they gaslight themselves into thinking that they've. Are you laughing at what I look like?
No, I'm laughing. Oh, no, I'm just smiling.
I thought you were looking at me.
I'm just like agreeing. Like I was a big gaslighter. I put a fucking ladder on that shit.
Yeah. You had a fucking ladder up your ass. I swear to God,
I'd gaslight myself.
You would. Yeah. You would. You.
Sometimes my ego still does it. Like it will still gaslight me. It's see what I mean? Like through this work, it's like I understand my ego very differently now than what I did even a year ago. It's like. I used to think my shadows were like, I think money runs out and things like that, which they can be, but it's like your shadows are a lot deeper and a lot more different than you think. And that's why like, I love coaching.
It has nothing to do with
the actual
external thing. Shadows
like
have nothing to do
half
with
your
that.
money scarcity wounds are coming from deeper shit. It's not like what you think it is. It's
like
it's just copied and pasted onto it.
Exactly. So, and you really learn that through going to the depths of doing all the fucking belief work around money, around all the things, and then you realize, oh, more money's not making me feel better. Less money doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't matter if I'm making money, if I'm not making money. That's like, it doesn't fucking matter, because it's not about the physical things. Like, and apply that to anything. I'm using money as the example, but in the relationship, not in the relationship, like all the things you feel now about when you're not in a relationship, that's all going to come up again when you're in the relationship.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I absolutely like, obviously we're really like fucking getting our dicks hard to this conversation. Yeah. We love it.
Because I just like spent so much of my life, I feel like I spent so much of my life dancing with this part of me. I was like, if I could just witness and understand that my money wounds were actually coming from, yes, childhood, yes, that, but it's like this need to control. It's like there is deeper shadows going on.
Exactly. It's like there's a point, like it's so helpful to witness like where we have this programming originate from, like what you said, like childhood and things like that. It's so helpful.
There's a time and place.
There's a time and place, but then there comes a fucking point where it's like, all right.
You're no longer the child.
Yeah, you're no longer the child, but then it's like, just knowing that isn't enough to get out of this energy.
Yeah.
It really isn't. It's just like, that's helpful to like to understand that it's not you. But now there's like a second part to this conversation that we're having now, where you actually have to know how to let go.
Yeah.
Right? And actually get yourself to want to let go, because that's the thing. You don't want to let go of these anxious thoughts because you're addicted to the problem solving. You're addicted to the ego is addicted to being in control, right? So that's why
it's addicted to just keeping you alive.
It's control. Yeah, it's alive, and just like, I need you to be listening to me. That's what the ego wants. It's like, I need you to be listening to me.
Hello, I'm there.
Exactly. And it's just living in the future, living in the past, and it's just not a hot thing. So going back to what we were saying now, which was your original question, which is, okay, so now you've identified that you're resisting the emotions.
Yeah.
and, you know, you're seeing if you're gaslighting yourself, if you're expressing it, if you're identifying with the emotions too much, like what's going on here. You've identified that. Now you're coming back here and you're like, okay, now what do I fucking do? What do I do? How do I move out of this emotion?
How do I get this?
And if you see the video, what we keep doing when we say, how do you move out of the emotion, is we keep doing this movement where we're like literally going up and out. And you've been doing it this entire time as well. I've been watching you do this because that's what it is. That's what it feels like when you get out of the way and you allow the emotion to be there. So what do I mean by get out of the way and allow the emotion to be there? So I'm literally going to fucking lay it out for you, right? This is all you have to do. So as Nadia said, you're not ignoring the limiting beliefs or anything like that. You're not ignoring the uncomfortable emotions. That's not what you should be doing, because that's distracting yourself. That's resisting them. When you ignore and resist, you're just pushing the emotion back down in your body. This is how, you know, physical ailments and things like that manifest, because you're not allowing the energy to pass through, which is what it wants to do. Instead, you're making it stagnate in the body.
And when people, can I just say one little thing just to add to this? A lot of the time people go, with their, like, why does, like, my worst case scenarios manifest? Why am I always manifesting this thing? And the reason why you are manifesting these situations that you don't like, or the parts of you that are scared and the fuck they're manifesting all these stories or whatever, is because, or even if you, like, kind of gaslight yourself into being like, okay, we're not going to believe that anymore, we're going to believe this, and it's still like a mental concept, and then you manifest what you want, but then some way, some back, you'll come back to the reality of like that, is because your body is still holding on to it when you resist it. And that's like what's your vibe, it's a part of your vibration. You're not actually like allowing that to come forward, and that's why your worst case scenario manifests, not because you haven't done enough mental work, or because you haven't dealt with the belief enough, or it's still there. It's because you haven't released it properly.
I love that. You haven't released it properly, and it's coming up because you haven't done that, because the energy needs to come up. It needs to move. Energy needs to be transformed. It doesn't want to stay stagnant, so it's going to find a way to come up. Bashar actually uses a really good analogy with this. He uses the analogy of like an elastic band. It's like the more you push down and resist and you don't deal, what happens is, like with an elastic band, I was like, do you have an elastic band on here? There we go. It's like the more I keep doing this, it keeps getting, like, the pressure keeps going and going and going and going and going until it can't go anymore, that it has to like flick back up, right? And then it just has no choice but to come back up, and it comes back up with a vengeance. So what you'll actually notice, and this is something I've actually spoken about to a couple of my clients before, but whenever there's actually something for you to like heal and move through, like there's a shadow aspect of yourself that's like coming up, you'll notice that it gets revealed to you in little ways. And it starts off as like a little like, ooh, that feels a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not enough to completely knock you off your socks.
Yeah, this is why this work's important, because you deal with your shit before fucking manifest.
Before it manifests into your 3D and it becomes this whole big fucking thing. And then you'll notice that over months, it's going to start knocking at your door. It's going to be like, hi, and it's going to come up a little stronger each time. And when it's like at that point,
I wonder, like, if you got, I feel like you've had some really good business example where this has happened with clients.
Fuck, all right, let me think about it. Okay, I'll try and give you an example.
Wait, finish what you were saying.
But that's what it is. It's like it comes up in little bits where it like knocks at the door, and it's coming up in like different strength each time. It's like hi, 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 hi. And then you're not dealing with it because you're like, I'm good, I'm feeling okay. And then maybe it comes up a little bit stronger and you go into it and you deal with it like the mental concept way, and you're not actually dealing with it. You're dealing with it in order to resist it. And then, I don't know what happened there, my voice. And then you know, resist it, and it keeps coming up, and then you're getting frustrated at this point. You're like, why does this keep coming up? I'm dealing with it. Why is it still here? I've already dealt with it. I've done the limiting belief work. What the fuck, right? So now you're resisting it even more, and you're getting mad at yourself. So you're literally fueling the fire now. You're making it stronger, right? And the emotion's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and you can't fucking stop it, because it's building momentum, because you've been ignoring it. So it's building and building and building, like that elastic band analogy, and it's getting to the point where you can't, like, you have no choice but to deal. And what ends up happening is it either manifests, so like it manifests into your 3D through it fucking up your internal world. Like it kind of gets to the point where it's like you can't get out of it. It's like the fear's there and you can't get out of it. The momentum is so strong at that point. or it manifests into the actual 3D where it gives you no choice but to actually deal with it. That's where it gets to, right? Where you're like, I have no choice but to actually now deal with this emotion. But the thing is, you had a chance to deal with this emotion.
Your higher self will always provide you opportunities to source your own power.
Exactly. And it was coming up. This thing was coming up to be dealt with, but it was only a little niggly feeling, but you ignored it, right? You ignored it and you resisted it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like your higher self will always, like when you have beliefs and stories come up, your higher self will always provide you opportunities to deal with that. That's why in like if you notice your like emotions on a daily basis and you are in tune with how you feel and what comes up throughout the day, not in a fucked way, but in a way that you're like observing your way of being, you will notice these emotions are coming up in little ways. And then often what happens when we are in resistance, we don't feel the emotion, your higher self will manifest, because it's like the energy behind that resistance is building and building and building, and it can manifest. And you have some really good examples of when you've been in business and it's like you've ignored it.
Yeah, I do have a lot of examples of this because I had the gaslighting wound as well. But I remember when I was being asked to actually transition to teaching business owners specifically, because at that point I was only teaching people how to do like intuition, soul purpose work type of vibe. And when I was asked to actually transition into business work and helping entrepreneurs, I had a lot of resistance. I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I was like, I'm not qualified, I can't do it, blah, 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 blah. Who am I to do that? Anyway, and I remember that I had no choice but to like fucking do it. So I was like, all right, do it, right? So I launched one of my programs and it was for business owners specifically. And I went on that journey of doing that, and I just like initiated myself into that. And it was so funny because like initially I had done the launch on like my intuition program and nobody had signed up, and I'd never had that experience before up until that point. I've always had people there.
That was like your first
That was my
failed launch.
Yeah, that was my first failed launch. So I was like, that's interesting. But I didn't even feel any certain way towards it because I knew. I knew that I was being asked to do this instead, and I said no because I was scared to follow my intuition then. Anyway, so then I was like, all right, well, I have no choice but to do it because fucking higher self is making me anyway. Yeah. So I did it. And then in this experience, because I was really having to push myself into being like this, you know, to being this coach now to help entrepreneurs do this work, I had a lot of limiting beliefs that were coming up that I was being asked to deal with, but I was ignoring it. So I was ignoring the little like niggly feelings that were coming up while I was like, you know, doing this program.
So things were happening in that group program?
So it was more like internal things coming up.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Like actually what was coming up? Just feelings.
It was just like feelings of who am I to be teaching other entrepreneurs when I still have so much. You didn't
feel like the main wound was feeling like you weren't qualified enough to be the teacher.
Yeah, I felt like I wasn't qualified. A really big like belief that would come up for me was, why would somebody hire me when they could hire like a 7-figure, 6-figure entrepreneur, right? Yeah. That was like a big one for me. I was like, why the fuck would they hire me? I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, because I really gave my value to those things, right? And I actually like really had to sit with this. And when I sat with this belief, I was like, it's because I wouldn't actually hire me.
Yeah.
Literally. That's how I felt. I was like,
well, that's often what it is, right? Everything's a mirror. So
I was like, I wouldn't actually hire me. That's why I had that. And I was just like, oh, okay, interesting. So I'm like judging myself based on like these things, and just it was like based on results, how much money I was making, how many clients I was holding, which is really funny because it was like when I actually transitioned into doing like helping entrepreneurs specifically, that's when like my business actually blew up.
Yeah, it makes sense because it was what
I would say.
Like this is what you teach people as a business. Like I know you don't teach it from a strategy lens. You teach people to own their personal power. So it's like it makes sense that life was like, you're going to teach this.
So own your
fucking work.
And I had to like deal with all the parts of me that felt like inadequacy.
Yeah.
When I wasn't like, because of like results and what I was doing. Yeah, it was fucking wild. Anyway, so in that container, I had all of those beliefs coming up, and I was like being asked to deal with them, and I really wasn't dealing with them great. Like I was ignoring them.
While you were dealing with them. Or you were ignoring, so.
I was dealing with them on a mental level, or I was ignoring feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it ended up actually manifesting into a physical experience where I literally ended up getting like called out by one of the clients that I was taking in a group container publicly in front of everyone.
Wow.
And I was just like, and then with an experience like that, like you're face to face with all of the beliefs that you have about yourself, all of like the inadequate thoughts that you have about yourself. And I was like, it's like I had no choice but to deal with them then. But that's a good example of how I was like being asked to move through these feelings, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And then it actually manifested as a client saying, I'm not going to say what they said, but it's just like they kind of like called me out in the container.
Called you out because I feel like, was it that you did something wrong, or like?
It wasn't that I didn't do something wrong. I just did something that they didn't agree with, right?
Right. So again, it's like the feeling of you being inadequate came forward.
Exactly.
So it's like
because it was like, yeah, and it got me to like question myself, and I was like, first of all, I was like, lots of emotion came up because it was in front of everyone. Yeah. It was in front of all the other students that I was taking, and I was like, oh my God, I'm the teacher, and like this is fucking like
awkward.
Confronting.
Yeah.
This is awkward, and I was just like, ooh, yeah. What do I do?
So that's a really good example of like life really was bringing you opportunities to it, and then your higher self will be like, okay, bitch, you're not fucking listening. Let's go.
Exactly.
I will make you listen, and you can deal with this once and for all.
And I had no choice at that point. When I went through that, I was like, oh, well, I got to deal with it now.
And that's why your fears and shit manifest, because
they
just ignore. So that's resistance. Yeah,
exactly right. So yeah, that's a good example that I can think of. So now going back to how do you actually move through it, right? So I'm literally going to give you the lowdown on what to fucking do. We've been really building this up.
We really have.
Like how to build, like how, we keep going in like every which way, but this is just how we roll.
Yeah.
So how to actually move through it, like I referenced before, as you see, our hands are doing this a lot. So in the podcast, if you can't see the visual of what I'm doing, I'm literally like pushing my hands up and out. So literally from like the root chakra all the way up to the crown chakra and out, because that is actually the way that emotion travels through your energy body. The thing is with the body, it is made up of energy, right? When you go down to the cells and our atoms and you see what they're made up of, it's energy, right? So your body is an energetic being, which means that it knows how to release and let go of emotion, right? It knows how to actually transmute emotion. Think about how smart your body is right now. Think about all the functions and systems that it's keeping going. It has you alive. It has everything working in homeostasis, right? It fucking knows what it's doing. This also applies to your energy. That when I heard this example, I was like, what the fuck? Like, why did I think that I needed to do anything?
Yeah, like, why did you think that you needed to do, like...
Why do I need to think I need to do an anger ritual or, like, get it out of me? I was like, your body knows how to get it out of you, which makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It, like, literally, when I heard this for the first time, all the light bulbs in my brain just went off, and I was like, what the fuck, Shule?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing I want you to hear right now. There is nothing you actually need to do. That's why we're saying do nothing, right? Because you're not meant to get involved, right? Your involvement, your mental like grasping onto it, trying to fix it, blah, 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 is what's keeping you from allowing the emotion to transmute through, right? Is there anything you want to say on that? Or you're good?
Yeah, I just think like actually going and explaining like, so you're doing
I'm going to do that now. Yeah. So what do I mean by that? So when the emotion comes up, what you want to do is you want to literally do nothing. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes and I want you to breathe. Focus on your breath, right? Focus on your breath and don't try and focus on feeling better. Don't focus on the emotion. Don't focus on the thought. Focus on your breath. Pay attention to what your body is doing in this moment, because your body's going to clench. That's what's going to happen, right? When you have an uncomfortable emotion come on, your body tenses. Tensing is actually a form of holding on, and that's your body literally holding on to the emotion. Don't let it do that.
So they have, just say someone has an emotion of like, I don't actually feel good enough, right?
Yeah, I don't feel good enough.
So with that emotion, they can feel it.
Yeah.
And then
your body's going to tense.
Yeah.
You're going to notice you're clenching, like your butt cheeks will clench, you'll clench. You might like stop breathing. Your breathing comes a little shallower. This is what happens when you're like paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
I find that happens when the emotions are very strong.
It can even happen when it's not. Like, because it's like so slight.
Yeah.
If you just like pay attention, it's like so fucking slight.
Your breathing's a good indication of how you feel.
Yeah, your breathing really tells you. So what you want to do is like when the emotion is there, let go. Relax. That's the biggest thing to focus on. Stop tensing your body, because the tensing is holding on. It's not letting the emotion go, right? Let go. Let go. Relax your shoulders, sag back in a seat, whatever you're at. Like Relax your face. Literally focus on that and focus on breathing. Breathe in and breathe out. And that's all you're doing. And then I want you to witness the emotion that's coming up from an observational point of view. Become the observer of the mind. And when you do this, you're going to notice that you actually, Michael Singer uses a good description word for this. You basically sit in the seat of consciousness, right?
Seat of awareness.
Seat of awareness, right? So you end up just witnessing what the human is doing rather than getting involved.
Yeah.
So you know how we said earlier on that there are two aspects of you that are alive and aligned right now, right? There's the aspect of you that knows the truth, and there's the aspect of you that has the limiting beliefs come up.
Ego, higher self.
Exactly. So you have these two aspects come up, and what's going to happen is you're going to take a seat with the higher self, and you're going to let the human do its thing, have its worries, do whatever it needs to do, and let the emotion pass through. And this is something that you just have to practice.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing.
It's not an easy
responding.
thing.
Like, it's a constant practice of like,
we still practice this every single day, right? It's, as you said, it's a practice that we have to do every single day. And when you do it, what's going to happen is through you're not doing anything, just through you relaxing and breathing and just witnessing the emotion's going to literally travel up your body. It's going to go through your chakra system. You're going to feel it, and it's going to release through the crown chakra. And when your shadows and negative frequencies are released, you become more of yourself, more of who you are, more of your truth. And this is when like emotions of like love and ecstasy and truth come washing in, because it's who you are. It
transmutes. So the fear starts to transmute when you're not in resistance, and it's like it's a really, really like thing that you got to keep working at. But
there's something I want to say in regards to this is you don't have to force yourself to feel good.
No,
if you're like forcing those emotions, you're resisting. You're not actually feeling.
Yeah,
sorry, I really wanted to say
that. It is, and it's like, so I'm just like thinking about this from all these different angles. So if someone is doing it, right, because this used to happen to me a lot. So the feeling was there. You're breathing it. It's like kind of like yoga, like you've said that before. It's like with yoga, like when you're like doing a new stretch, you're in pain. And it's like you just breathe through that pain, and then eventually that pain stops, right?
I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, if you really want to learn how to do this, yoga has been like the biggest teacher for us in actually doing this, right? Yeah. Not responding, not identifying, not resisting, but breathing and just being in the body and just witnessing what's happening.
Yeah.
Really powerful practice.
And what you're actually doing in these moments of like releasing the emotion, you're surrendering. So it's like, this is what surrender actually is. It's like, there's no form of control. It's like, this feeling's coming forward, you're allowing it to come forward, and you just let your body, like, even if your body clenches, so you release, because that happens to me sometimes, like, I'll release, and then my body will clench up again. You just keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it. But oftentimes, like, something that used to happen to me is I was feeling like I'm not getting better, or like it was still there. So, and then you get caught in that thought of like, oh, I'm not, like what you said before, I'm not getting better. So what do you do in those situations?
That's the mind, again, trying to go into control. It's scared. It's scared that you're not doing anything about it. It's scared because you're not listening to it. It's perhaps the emotion is too painful and it's like, fuck, this really hurts. I don't want to deal with this. So then it tries to distract you with, oh, it's not working. It's not working. We may as well stop this, right? And it's like, keep going. That's still a form of control. That is still the mind trying to work through this, through a mental concept. It's still trying to get you by the balls. Yeah. And all you want to do is, again, just let go.
It's going to be a little bit difficult at the start because you're not used to it. And sometimes it can take a little while. Sometimes it takes me 10 minutes to sit there and release something. Yeah. Release the emotion. And it's like I'm releasing it. Clench again, release, clench, and then eventually when you don't put pressure on yourself, you know what I mean? When you're not in this state of like, I need to feel better or whatever.
Or I need to do this to feel better, like as well. Those narratives, it's like, no, stop.
So it's all mental. And the more you practice doing this, the more you'll get, I feel like it just gets easier and you get smarter at it and you get, so like for me now, like when that feeling of like, you're not doing this properly, so what I would do in those moments of like, this isn't working or whatever, obviously not as much anymore, but I would breathe through that. So like that's another wound, another shadow coming up. So you breathe through that. Yeah. And you breathe through that. And you breathe through that. And then you're just
going to notice, like when you let yourself do it. Sorry, I keep talking over you, but obviously I have so much to fucking say about this.
Okay. You're passionate, doll.
When this happens, it's like what's going to happen is so many narratives are going to come up. Yeah. Because your mind's going to try and get you. right? So it's going to be like, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? Right? And you're just like not getting into it. I remember when I first started doing this, I would get really fucking sucked into it. Like,
it's very easy to get sucked into.
Yeah, I would like believe it, and I'd be like, oh no, it's right. There's this to work through. Fuck, it has a point.
Yeah, and like honestly, like this has been like the biggest game changer. Like this has helped me a lot with money. Because something I was the biggest problem solver with money.
You were.
So then like when I was like practicing releasing, because I was releasing the part of me that was like, I need to figure this out. So the part of me that was like, we should visualize, we should affirm, we should think this way. I needed to release any part of me that was in that identity of doing that. And this was like such a game changer. I feel like it's been such a game changer, and it was like
for me too.
Yeah,
it's changed my life.
Yeah,
it has changed the way that I've done. Like I'm saying in terms of like business, but in terms of my quality of life.
Yeah,
because I feel like I'm no longer living in like what ifs of the future and trying to transmute the past. Instead, I'm just like, I'm good with all of it, and I'm so like, I'm not even like resisting pain anymore, because that was a big thing for me. I was so scared to feel pain. Yeah, and now like understanding that my body can transmute, and I get to learn so much from pain. Like that was my biggest teacher. So now knowing that like I'm okay with anything that happens, because I know that I have this like technique, and I don't have to actually figure anything out. Like all I have to do is just be with myself and witness, and like help. Like that's it. Like it just feels so freeing.
I feel like there was a part of me that was like, my body was like really starting to reject all the belief work, all that. When I say belief work, like your whole universe is made up of belief. I'm not saying that you like we don't have limiting beliefs and things like that. What I'm saying is the way I would deal with my beliefs was very much like subconscious rewiring and all of that, and like I obviously what we're doing, and when you're releasing the emotion, you are rewiring your brain. You are rewiring the way you're approaching. So it's just a different way of doing it.
Well, the thing is, we had done that. It's like we had grown beyond that conversation, but we weren't getting this part of it, right?
Well, you weren't
non-identification.
It was like you were rewiring it from your mind, but not your body. So it's like when you release that emotion, naturally what happens is your higher self does come forward, and you remember the truth. It's like you get into feelings of it. Like say if you've got scarcity around money, the frequencies of abundance come forward, because it's like this, the emotion has left and your human is no longer like in those moments. So it's like you are rewiring the way you're thinking. You naturally start going into different ways of thinking, but you don't need to sit there writing it down every single day, blah blah blah, because this is all mental mind work, and you are trying to manifest from your mind, and your body is suffering from it.
Yeah,
and that was like the biggest thing I remember.
Tramp, sorry. He's going to be annoying if I don't keep doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tramp's my cat, by the way. I have a zoo here, so if you see me looking at animals, that's what's happening. I'm like I'm like a mother of three, trying to figure out what's going on with them.
That's that. So basically, for me, I remember just always having this like thing that I would like ask coaches, and I just feel like I've realized after a while, I'm like, I get what you're saying, but my body is not coming on board with that.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like I know the truth, but
it's like, are you guys
like feel it?
Yeah, and I'm like, sure. How are you actually feeling better, bro? Because it's like, no, like honestly, I was like, how are you actually like doing this and feeling better?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't. Like, I feel good for 5 minutes or a day or 2 days or whatever. But I'm like, if I have to do this for the fucking rest of my life, where I'm sitting here like going to worst case possible, but I'll be here for fucking years.
Literally, because your mind can fucking come up with so much. It's like, once one problem's solved, it's going to go on to the next. It's the most like fucking annoying way to live this existence.
Honestly. But I hope like you've actually gained a lot from this episode of recognizing, because I feel like you don't hear it a lot in this space when it comes to like limiting beliefs and intrusive thoughts, anxious attachment. Like it's just I'm just so passionate about like actually going into the detail of like what happens at a mind level.
Me too. And I love like actually giving you like tangible, okay, then if this doesn't work, what does work? Like I think that's been a big part of our journey. Yeah. To figure out like, okay, energetically the depths of how do you actually like release an emotion? How do you not identify with limiting beliefs? And I love that we do that. Like we're so deep.
We're so deep. I think like the biggest thing for me has been like I hope you recognize like the role that your ego is playing, and a lot of like these like concepts we learn around manifestation and limiting belief work, like the ego is involved and like it's a role. So yeah, because it really does actually keep you in these like cycles where nothing ever gets better. You never get through it.
it just feels like a never-ending shit fucking cycle.
Yeah, so
yeah, I feel like that's everything we wanted to share on it. We would love to hear your takeaways as well, your thoughts. Please share with us on YouTube. There's a little comment section. You can share your comments below. We love, love, love to hear from you. DM us on Instagram. We love to have these chats with you, and let us know that you're liking the episodes by liking this on YouTube, subscribing to the YouTube channel, subscribing to the podcast if you listen to this on the podcast. Also, another incredible way to support us and to also get this podcast episode out there to other listeners is to rate and review. So that's a perfect way to like give back to this community if you're like, I fucking love these episodes and you want to see more. Also, if there are any like topics you want us to cover.
Yeah, like if you guys have any like things that are pressing and anything that you want to talk about, DM us.
We would love to hear from you because we'd love for this to be like a co-creation experience as well. So yeah, definitely don't feel shy to DM us. We want to hear what you want to see from this space. Yeah. And thank you so much for being here. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
I have my wine. Cheers. We'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one.